Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sephiroth, and today we're diving into an exciting spell mod. This is one of my favorites, not because it adds magic, and not because it changes the magic gameplay, but because it makes the development of your magic so much more immersive. That is right, we are getting into the spell mod known as SpellResearch. This bad boy... There is so much. I'm not even sure I can cover all this in one video. There is so much to this mod. Basically, it allows you to learn spells on your own. You no longer need the College of Winterhold. You no longer need vendors. And it suits multiple play styles. If you want to be a nerd, an alchemist, or an Indiana Jones type adventurer, it's all good. So when you get SpellResearch, actually my light is flickering here. That is going to bug me. Let me just turn off my travel lantern here. There we go. All right, yeah, I guess that suits the aesthetic a little more anyway. All right, so when you get SpellResearch, there are a couple things to keep in mind. First off, it doesn't fire up right out of the get-go. All right, your first step will be to import spells. Now, you will need to find some patches depending on which spell mods you're already using. So for example, this will automatically bring in all your vanilla spells so that you can learn them through SpellResearch, but it won't bring in Mysticism, Arcanum, Odin, Apocalypse, unless you already have a patch for that. But most of the spell mods that I've seen have patches for SpellResearch, because in essence, it just has to flag each spell and add some additional information for it. So it's not too intense. So our first step is going to be to import these spells. They ask that you do it outside of the menu, and I ask that you do not do this during combat. I am running a mod that disables the pause on your menu, so as you're importing, it's going to bring up a menu every time it finishes importing the spells from vanilla and every individual mod. So you can read in the upper right corner, I'm 50 out of 167 forms for the Skyrim spells. And once that runs out, once that gets up to 167, it will give me the option to either import them or ignore them. As we can see, so it does it for the next batch of spells. So I have the Dawnguard DLC that comes with some spells. Yes, we're going to import those so that we'll be able to learn Dawnguard spells on our own. You won't even have to do the Dawnguard questline to learn Dawnguard spells. Same thing for the Dragonborn DLC. We're doing the same thing there. The nice thing about this, because it breaks it down by type, if you decide that you want Dawnguard Arsenal spells to not be part of your SpellResearch, that you force yourself to do the Dawnguard campaign before you learn them because they're specialized magic, you can just hit no. And it will continue going on the other batches of spells that you have and leave those behind. It's now bringing in a couple of other mods that I've added in for my particular flavor of SpellResearch. Let's see, what else can we talk about while we're importing? There are a couple of playthrough styles that I would heavily consider for this kind of a mod. First off, you can learn all of the magic that every spell in the game basically can be learned without actually attending the College of Winterhold. Okay, so if you're doing, say, a druid build, and obviously it's kind of weird for your druid to go to college. You could use this mod so that your druid can actually be out communing with nature and learning magic, which I think makes total sense for a druid-like playthrough. Or if you want to be a cleric that just focuses on restoration magic, that fights the undead, you don't necessarily need to be going to the College of Winterhold to learn that. You should be able to pick all that up from your deity. And if you're doing the D&D rules for learning magic as a cleric. So that's the most obvious advantage to a playthrough of using this mod. Also, you can bypass a lot of the master level quests. So technically you could go to the College of Winterhold, study all the regular spells that you want, and then just focus on using SpellResearch to unlock the master level ones, so you can kind of bypass those quests. That is another way to do it. So keep in mind, when you only have SpellResearch, it gives you this engine that on its own allows you to learn spells on your own. You don't have to buy from any vendors. You don't have to learn them from any NPCs. However, one of the other combinations that I've seen this mod highly recommended with are two other mods. One is called No Spell Tomes as Loot from vendors. I'm sure I'm getting that confused a little bit. If you just look up no loot, it'll pop up in the Nexus search bar. Basically, it removes spell tomes from loot, drop, and from vendors. At least anything that's within the no loot mod's reach. So for example, I have a patch for that so that my apocalypse spells don't show up in the inventory of these mages here at the College of Winterhold. So I've kind of cut myself off from vanilla and apocalypse spells completely, which forces me to learn them on my own. Unfortunately, the mod does not yet have a patch for some of the other spell mods like Odin. So the vanilla spells that Odin touches don't show up, but the new spells that Odin touches do show up. So for example, I needed a alteration spell with which to start studying, so I grabbed the Odin spell Ease Burden from Tolfdir because the mod doesn't have a patch yet for Odin spells. I'm sure it's coming, I just don't know how long it'll take. You can also combine that with a mod. Stop interrupting. Go away, Nira. Fine, I'll go sulk in my room like a good old mage. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so because you're going to create a world in which spell tomes are super rare, some other people like to use the mod expensive spell tomes, which makes your spell books more expensive. Because obviously, if it's going to take all this effort to create spells, you can actually, with this, oh man, I have a script here for the Spell Research MCM, and I forgot to include some of its other features. Basically, you can make and sell your own spell tomes. So you can literally create an income stream by just writing and selling magic, which is also pretty cool. All right, since we're done spell importing now, we can go ahead and hop over to the configuration. First thing I like to do with Spell Research is I like to enable the hotkey. So I may play with a controller, but I'm on the PC, so I have my keyboard obviously for command interface and stuff. I like the left alt hotkey, and that makes it easier to open up your spellbook. So for example, usually without the hotkey, you'd have to go into your inventory, go to your research journal, turn that on, and that brings up everything that you can do with 1/3 of this mod. Now, if I hit left alt right now, I can pick. I can go to my research journal. I can also go to my Alembic. Yes, there is then there's a route in this mod to learn magic, either through enchanting, alchemy, or research. So this mod can go into a lot of different builds, not just pure mages. Let's see, let me hop back over to the configuration menu. Okay, so we've got our options here. That's probably where we should start. When you first activate the mod, there will be a number of tutorials that pop up because there is a lot to this mod. If you have any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to mention it in the comments below, especially if you want to see a deep dive into this mod, because again, this mod is huge. There's so much, and I can only cover so much in one video. But basically, the main takeaway in the options menu here is you can control how long it takes to research and craft and how much experience you get as you research and craft. Because the vanilla settings are designed for a long grind, right? This mod, if left in its original form, will at least double the length of your mage playthrough because you'll spend so much time researching and experimenting and developing new spells. Particularly if you have a lot of spell mods like I do. I have hundreds and hundreds of new spells brought in that were never meant to be in vanilla, which obviously makes things more exciting because you don't know what you're going to get. Whereas if you just did this with vanilla spells, you could kind of be like, well, there's only 3 fire spells that are at this level of difficulty, so I can learn them all pretty quickly. Not so if you're using mods. Probably an important feature to cover is the guide. So this gives you, basically this would be a checklist for this very showcase. Again, look at all this stuff. I cannot cover all of this in just one video. So if you guys want a deep dive, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I will hit these guides and we'll go through all of that as well. But the main thing, the most important thing, the crux, the core of spell research is the experience. Now, this all is blank right now because I haven't started any of this on this character, but I want to show you how many archetypes there are for spell research. These are the different pieces of spells that you need to study in order to actually create and learn magic spells. So you've got 5 per page. Each of these 5 will be broken down by difficulty. So each of these archetypes is going to have a novice level, apprentice, adept, expert, and master. So you have 12 pages at 5 archetypes per page. That's 60 archetypes. 60 archetypes times 3 levels of difficulty is 300 different levels or themes that you need to learn in order to master every spell in this game. It's massive. It'll take you a while. I highly recommend starting off with a single school of magic unless you're trying to pull off a pure magic build. I don't know if I would recommend we'll talk about it. If you're going right out of the gate with this mod and you're only using this mod, you can totally do a pure mage build, no problem. If you're also using no loot, no spell tomes as loot or from vendors, and you're starting off as a pure mage, it's going to be a lot harder because you're going to have a harder time getting just novice level spells and getting your basic research out of the way. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. So the first thing we're going to do is I will show you what it takes to get this research going. So step 1, we're going to do, what's a good basic one? Let's go ahead and look at Conjure Familiar, because this is actually a gold mine of a spell. You almost would start for Breton just for this spell because it will jumpstart your research into conjuration. So you noticed I put my conjuration spell in both hands. That allows you to gain experience faster. But first we're going to analyze the spell. Now, do you remember when I was looking at the experience tab in the mod MCM? It had a number of archetypes and they were all blank. Once I start researching, this will give me archetypes in fire and forget spells, conjuration spells, spells that have to do with creatures and souls, spells that use aimed, location targeting, controlling, and summoning techniques. So as you can see, the modder broke down every Skyrim spell into a series of pieces, right? And the more pieces you know, the easier it is to learn additional spells. So we're going to go ahead and do some research. They got a little tutorial here. Yeah, we'll go ahead and read it real quick. Researching spells requires you to have at least one spell equipped. This is just a fun little thing. If you do the same spell in both hands, you'll actually learn twice as fast. You'll get twice as much XP. So I highly recommend doing that. It also burns your mental energy or your magicka to focus deeply on your spells. It will also take a few seconds to get your notes together for spells you are researching. Once you've started researching, you have 2 means of researching. 1, you can observe the effects as you cast the spells. Or 2, you can use your research journal again to spend time analyzing the composition of the spell. The latter option is more efficient than the former, but will be much more taxing on the mind. So here's what that means in layman's terms. We have to wait until we've gotten our notes together. It only takes a few seconds. You can tell because your character's, got his little trusty book out. You've gotten your notes together, you can start researching. Now, when you enter researching mode, there is a debuff. It automatically reduces your magicka by 50. So if we were to go out and just start throwing down some spells and fighting bad guys, we would gain a little bit of experience in spell research for each of these castings. So we can go ahead and hop over to the MCM, back down to spell research, go over to experience, and then we'll have to find the right page because despite the fact that the spell has 7 archetypes, there's over 60. So we should have some movement in one of these. There we go. Okay, so you remember creatures is part of this, is a piece of the spell because obviously you're summoning a creature. So in the castings that I just did, I got some experience at novice level, I got some experience at apprentice level, and I got some experience at adept level. So the nice thing about this is while I'm using a novice level spell, I still gain experience in higher level spells just at a slower rate. So this will allow you to level up, right? You don't have to wait until you find an apprentice level spell to learn an apprentice level spell. which is huge because the way I play, you can't actually find any spell tomes for most apprentice level spells. So you need a way to jump to level up to higher levels of spells. And this is how you do it. Because when you research, you gain experience in multiple levels of magic, multiple difficulties at the same time. But you gain your novice level stuff faster. Whatever spell school you are in, like I'm casting a novice level spell, so I gain more experience in novice than anything else. All right, so this is your basic run-of-the-mill. You could do this when you're fighting. I mean, you'll take 50 Magicka debuff, but at least you gain spell research experience without actually going through an arduous process. I don't mind the following process I'm about to show you because, frankly, I think it makes you feel a little more mage-like. But this is your other option for learning. Now, notice I did 3 or 4 spells, and I got maybe 4 novice XP for that, which wasn't a whole lot. So we're going to now continue research. This means we're actually focusing our magicka into understanding the core of our magic. I've actually leveled this character up to the point where he has 175 magicka, which means minus the 50 that I'm using for training, he's got another 120. The reason that's important is because for every hour you spend researching, you will lose another 10 magicka. So 12 hours will cost you 120 magicka. I'll show you. All right, this is where the research comes in. Your character actually, I love the animation because your character actually looks like he's delving into his magic and studying the spells and how it works. The pages themselves look like more like a ledger than spell glyphs, but the mod has so much other material to it, I'm not going to split hairs. Now, if you're doing a needs-based mod, notice it told me I haven't prayed in a while. So if I'm not careful, I have to actually pray routinely to keep my god happy. If I were to study like 3 or 4 days in a row, I would lose a lot of favor with my deity because I'm not praying enough. Because literally 12 hours go by. Like the NPCs will reset and go to their sleeping quarters, or they'll get up and go out for work for the day, whatever, right? You got to keep all of that in mind. But now that I finished my research, I now have mental exhaustion, right? We're up to 120 points of magicka, so 10 for every hour that I was researching. So if I go up to my skills right now, I am sitting on a whopping 5 magicka. Now, the only way to fix that is to sleep.
I think the
and you have to sleep for the same amount of time that you researched, right? So it takes 12 hours of rest to fix 12 hours of research. This is where a bit of the monotony can come into play, right? If you're just using the book, there are other ways to get experience, which I'm going to show you. This is the most monotonous, it's routine. Some players might really like this because you feel like you're researching magic. And I don't know if you noticed, but I gained a lot of experience in conjuration. I gained an entire level of experience in conjuration just from that one study session. So you will actually be leveling up your magic skills as you're researching. So you can do a pure vanilla build and just keep grinding out those researching books until you get your restoration up to 50 or 75. It just would take a long time and it'd be kind of boring for me. But here's the main crux of the issue, because that, while looking at that spell book was a lot more monotonous and you had to sleep afterwards, and if you're running like I need, you have to eat. So like there's a lot of things to balance. I got 365 XP just from that one session. So to put that in perspective, in order to start experimenting with other creature-based spells, I need about 500 experience at novice level. That applies to every spell archetype, right? So if I'm looking at developing fire spells, I need about 500 experience in novice level fire spells before I can start learning and discovering fire spells on my own. And that obviously goes up the higher. Like I think you need 2,500 experience before you can start unlocking apprentice level spells. Master level requires like 25,000 experience. It varies in scales, but the key part of this mod is developing enough experience in these different archetypes so that when you go to discover a new spell, you have enough experience to actually discover it and not get super frustrated. And believe me, when I first started using this mod, I got super frustrated. Okay, so that's level 1, right? That's using your book to study your magic, and there you go. So we're going to do that one more time because you need about 500 novice XP in order to start developing master or novice level spells on this archetype. And what do you know, we'll have over that once we finish with this session. Now, there are a number of other things you can do with your research book, things that you can craft, for example, and we're going to go through that process as well. First off, I've got to pray to my deity because I want to keep RK happy. This was actually recommended by one of you guys that I try out an RK playthrough because apparently that boosts your health regen. And given some of the mods that I tend to throw on myself because I'm a glutton for punishment, I can always use some health regen. All right, so we're almost rested up. That will give us over 500 experience in novice level spells. So I'm hoping that this will be enough for us to learn a new spell, because I want you guys to see what the process looks like. So first off, we're going to postpone research. That's going to keep all of our magicka. So in order to make a new spell, there are two phases. The first is writing theses, right? So those are like putting your ideas on paper. When you're trying to develop a new spell, you got to get all your ideas out on paper. And then you combine them into a spell formula that hopefully creates a spell. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and go through some of the tutorials here. To craft a thesis, you will need writing materials, right? You're going to need a quill, ink, and paper, and enough magicka to write a complex text on magical theory. So this is going to apply a debuff to your magicka, much like we saw when we were researching through the book. Note that more complex theses require more paper to be written down and are more taxing on the mind. So the higher level the thesis, the more magicka you'll lose when you create it. So this is going to show me the theses that I have already unlocked. So for example, we have non-theses categories. You can also learn magic by studying ancient texts. These are in a number of different languages. There's one for Dova, there's Falmer, there's Eyelid. I think there's another one for Dwemer. I think there's 6 in total. We're not going to have enough time to go over all of that in one video. But we also have some crafting options that allow you to there. So the crafting allows you to actually make ink as well as paper. So a lot of the ingredients that you need in order to research, you can actually find them by going into dungeons. Like, I know I have a lot of ancient parchments here that I could turn into rolls of paper, but you can actually use spell books, like ruined spell books. It doesn't give me that option because I don't have any in my inventory. But when you're in a dungeon and you find ruined spellbooks, you can turn those into paper, right? You don't have to go around to all of Skyrim trying to find a vendor that has, 5 more rolls of paper, because they're surprisingly rare in vanilla Skyrim. Anyway, all right, let's get some theses going. So first off, we have your casting type. There are two total. One is concentration, and the other one is fire and forget. Most spells are going to be fire and forget. We're going to write this at novice level because we don't have enough experience to actually learn anything at apprentice yet. We're going to go ahead and do 2 of those just in case the first one fails. Now we have magic type. Now for magic type, we have creatures and soul. So since we're trying to learn another conjuration spell, let's go ahead and do soul, but we're going to leave creature because I'm hoping you don't look for an exact match, right? There's summoning spells that bring in undead, Atronox, Daedra. So we're going to leave creatures in the hopes that we can pick up one of these other spells that's fire and forget and soul based, but not necessarily creature. We're definitely going to still need aimed as well as location, because all conjuration spells are focused on conjuring something at a certain location in an aimed fashion. And okay, so we've done 2 of each in the 4 main archetypes that I want to implement. Now, by now, you'll notice if I go to I am mentally exhausted, so I'm going to need to rest for another 10 hours to just to attempt to apply these theses into a spell. Yeah, and this is just the first way of learning spells is through your research journal. There's also the alembic and enchanting. So I'm going to try to cover them all in one video. But man, yeah, there's a lot here. Okay, so all right, first I've got to be happy with my deity, because when you're resting 10 to 12 hours at a time, you got to pray a lot. Same thing if you're using I need. It can get a little, you'll be eating and drinking like every time you do anything. I'm in the wrong menu. Okay, got a little turned around there. I apologize. All right, so now we go to compose spell formula. In order to compose a spell, you'll need to collect your theses. You compose them into theories, put them into a spell. You have to make sure that the lowest level thesis you put in is the level spell you'll develop. So for example, I've got these theses here. These are all novice level. Let's say, for example, that I had a master level Fire and Forget, but I used novice level Soul and Location Conjuration. No matter what, the result of these, even with the inclusion of the master level spell, would still be novice level because it goes to the lowest common denominator. So in order to learn a master level conjuration spell, you will need a master level thesis in Fire and Forget, Soul, Aim, Location, Conjuration, everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and add all of these in and hope that I have enough experience to make this work. So as you can see, now they are all in place in the research journal. But this is a little thing. You have to restart the process or it won't kick. He needs to have his spellbook out before he'll actually compose the spell formula. So now it goes to what you've already preloaded and it will study. I found that out the hard way after about a half an hour of being very frustrated on the screen. They're in the research journal. Why aren't I learning anything? It's because you have to make sure his spellbook is open, which means going back out of the menu and starting over. I will point out that these theses, they only cost me a roll of paper and some magicka, but they're worth 115 gold apiece. And that is because of my expensive spell tomes mod that makes them more expensive. So you can actually make a character that makes his living by writing out spell theses and selling them to vendors. So that's another way that you can fund your character depending on how much of a bookworm you want to run. But if you're doing College of Winterhold, for example, as an alternate start, this might be a useful way to maintain your funds. Okay, so after much time and energy, I believe I've managed to create a new spell formula. I review my final composition and try to form the spell in my hands, and it blazes to life. After reviewing my papers, I noticed that a few theses could only be used for this spell, so I throw those away and keep the rest. So we didn't actually use the location or conjuration theses in the spell that we discovered. So let's go have a look at what we discovered. We have now unlocked Conjure Avenging Wraith. There we go. We found a new spell. So how can you make this as painless as possible? The rule of thumb here. When you're looking at your experience levels, let's say, for example, this is creatures. Let's say this is something. Let's say they had an archetype for Daedra. I don't know if they do, but let's say they did. And I was trying to learn the Daedra spell. And as I'm going out finding loot, I find a thesis for Daedra, so I don't have to write it out myself. And I throw it into spell research and I try to discover a Daedra-based spell. It will most likely fail because I don't actually have any experience in the Daedra archetype, right? So you have to have experience, enough experience in each of the archetypes before you can start learning the spell. If you're missing one, it's very likely that the spell will fail. And keep in mind, even if you have enough experience in all of the archetypes, there is like a 1 in 3 chance that it'll still fail because you're learning, you're growing. You're not going to master it all on the first try. So be patient and be informed, because if you don't have experience in a thesis that you come across and you start throwing that into your playthrough. So for example, these are all of the theses I've found just in standard loot. I didn't write any of these. Oh, look, there is a Daedra one. Ha, fine. I guessed right. Anyway, so if I were to take this Daedra one and throw it into my next attempt at a spell, because I don't actually have experience in the Daedra school, I wouldn't be able to unlock anything Daedra-like. Well, there would be a very low chance, we'll put it that way, very low chance of unlocking anything with a Daedra type because I don't have any experience in it yet. So these are not meant as get-out-of-jail-free cards to replace the experience that you have. They're meant to make it easier so that you don't have to find a paper for every single one of these that you have to write. And you can just sell them. I mean, this expert level poison type is worth 1,700 gold. That's not bad. And obviously, if that's too OP for you, you can remove the expensive spell books, expensive spell tomes mod, and then they're just going to be like regular price. I forget how much, but less, a lot less. And considering how many of these you find when you're adventuring, that might be saner. I don't know. I like to save them because eventually you're going to be experienced in all of these schools, and it saves you trouble. One thing that I do suggest is if you're going to be doing like a full playthrough, organize these by school or by difficulty, right? So keep all of your novice level spells in one wardrobe, keep all of your apprentice level spells in another, because remember, if I bring in like my apprentice level arcane energy, but all of my other stuff is novice level, I'm only going to get novice level arcane energy. So you want to get your money's worth when you're using those theses. Anyway, okay, so there is, all right, that is the initial a bit. Keep in mind even when you learn a new spell, that does result in some mental exhaustion, so you will wait again. And then you will pray to your deity or stuff your face, depending on which needs-based mod you are running at the time. Obviously, this is very immersive, but if you combine this with I need, you're going to need a lot of food just to keep your character going, which might be another reason to be selling all of those theses to make money. I don't know. Okay, so before I wrap this up, this is just a basic overview of functionality for the game. Next, we're going to look at the alembic. So we have dissolve items, analyze solutions, mix ingredients. So we're going to try analyzing solutions because I think I was able to bring some in with the command line. The hard part is with alchemy, you're basically uncovering ancient formulas that have been lost to time, right? So they have really weird names like Amaktuna Shavada. And I looked through Reddit. I was trying to find actual names of these things so that I could import them through the command line. And I couldn't actually, you can find guides on how to do alchemy, but no one was like, hey, this is the name of these different items because they're so bizarre. So I'm not sure what we can analyze, but we'll try. So you can dissolve items into solutions, and then you study them to learn about those spell archetypes. So the way that we were opening our spell book or casting spells to learn about a spell archetype, you can actually accomplish that same thing, gain experience in those archetypes just by being a chemist. Let's see here. Well, I'm not sure exactly what all I can add in to be melted. Let's try the deer skull. We'll try that. I'm not sure if that can even be melted, but let's see. So I wonder if I have to dissolve items. I'm thinking cannot dissolve that much material in an alembic. Okay. Yes, I can. I know. I apologize. Why?
Please clean up after yourself.
Why is it doing that? Okay, that's new. All right. One moment. All right. I did some digging, and I don't think that alchemy bug I ran into is from spell research. I have a number of other mods that affect like the menu, and I had to change settings to make my shape-shifting mods work. So I'm pretty sure that wasn't the mod. I looked on the Nexus and I didn't find anyone else complaining about the same bug, so I think you'll still be good. Regardless, you don't want to put too much stuff into your alembic because it's too small anyway. But I did find a way, even in my playthrough here, even without fixing the bug, I found a workaround that will also help your regular playthrough, and that is the Cauldron. Cauldron is basically the alembic on steroids. You do not want to take it camping with you or hunting with you because it weighs 100 friggin' pounds, but you can set it, obviously, anywhere you want and do your alchemy work, which actually looks really cool. I need like a better player home. There's not enough room to really enjoy the majesty of this cauldron. Okay, so you've got your cauldron. You've got the items that you want to melt down. That's these imbued things. So it has the imbued tag. That means it's meant for, it has spell archetype knowledge that you can download or absorb in a number of different ways. So this is the alchemical version of that. So the way the cauldron works is first you got to add fuel. Now fuel for the cauldron, might as well read the description here. You need to fuel a cauldron with ingredients or potions that have the weakness poison effects. This will assist in breaking down enchanted items. 1 unit of fuel will be able to break down 1 unit weight of material. So remember those imbued items I was showing you, they weigh a different amount. They weigh like 4 pounds or 5 pounds or 7 pounds. So for the number of pounds, you also need that many ingredients with a weakness poison effect, which makes total sense to me because something that weakens the target then has a corrosive effect, which is what you're trying to break down in the first place. So thankfully, I've already done some digging and I've got, let's see, so we want weakness to magic, that's 1 pound. Weakness to shock, that's 2. Is that all I got? Well, I guess we'll just put in some more. Let's see, so 7, we'll put in 8 pounds worth of material. Oh, let's see. Sometimes it doesn't register that you have added stuff until you reset the menu. So it's, come on. This animation is a little long when you're trying to exit, but it's almost there. I do love that green misting effect when you're stirring. That's pretty cool. I guess the modder wanted a longer exit time for the Cauldron because it is meant for mass production. There is 0 units of fuel. Oh, I know what I did wrong. You have to go back to this menu. You don't have to exit the Cauldron. You just have to go back into the add fuel option. Whoa, 25 units of fuel. Okay, that's more than I anticipated. I think that other elixir I was using was like super potent. All right, so then you can dissolve items. You can dissolve any amount of material into concentrated liquids for use in research and alchemy. However, you need sufficient fuel. Yep, we got that. Your alembic can be used to decompose smaller amounts without fuel. So the alembic can do the same dissolving process, but on a smaller scale. If you're skilled in alchemy, which I'm not, you may learn a small amount about the spell archetypes associated with the item while it is being dissolved. So we're going to go ahead and throw in, we've got like 25 pounds worth of material, so we'll take the heaviest one of these. Let's do the human skull. That'd be good. So I do the human skull, I go back to dissolve items, and the human skull should be absorbed. And a 1, and a 2. There we go. All right, there we go. So you see these ingredients that just popped up? Yeah, they don't last very long, but they don't make a lot of sense. All right, so we have dissolved the items. Now we're going to go ahead and do nothing and exit, which takes a bit. So if you saw the names popping up in the right-hand column, those, I guess because they're supposed to be dissolved fluids from an ancient era that will not use your base core common language, therefore they don't make a lot of sense, or they have really weird names. So for example, they should be oh, did those end up as potions or ingredients? Come on now, they had really weird names. It shouldn't be hard to find them. It should be right here. Imbued to your skull. There it is. Yeah. So like Mer Amaini Sagravia. Like, how am I going to remember what that is and then put that into the search menu? Good luck. Okay. So step number 2, we go to the alembic. We're going to analyze solutions. So the solutions that I just dissolved can be analyzed, and when they're analyzed, you will learn some spell archetypes. So we're going to analyze the Merai Segrava, and while we're at it, wasn't there? Yeah, Garok Sa Brown. Okay, we're going to do both of those. So we go back into the alembic, back into the analyze solutions where these are loaded, and voila, we've learned a very small amount on adept spells involving mortals, and a very small amount of expert level spells involving stamina. So you notice that said very small amount. The reason for that was because these alchemical items are meant to be dissolved and then reapplied to each other. You're meant to create larger, or stronger and stronger concentrations. Okay, oh, I think you leave this menu faster if you just start moving your camera around. I just realized that, instead of standing there patiently like a good little boy. Okay, so we're going to put away the cauldron because that thing is super heavy. But that is the core of what you do with alchemy. Obviously, there were a couple other abilities that popped up, like being able to mix ingredients and dissolve at least smaller items. All right, so that was your 101 for an alchemist who's learning magic. Now, there are a couple of other things that we can do with these theses, as well as those imbued magical items that also go into this mod and a magic playthrough. So we've already looked at the research journal, which allows you to learn spells kind of the nerd way, if that makes sense. You pull out the spell, you study it, you learn about those archetypes, and then you try and research other spells. You also have the alembic, and by extension the cauldron, which allows you to dissolve items in order to learn the magical properties that make them up, which, if you're doing an alchemic build, is really cool, because this is a way that your thief character that's based on alchemy, the amount of knowledge that you gain from the alembic items, like the Nase Grava stuff that we dissolved, the amount that you learn from that is actually based on your alchemy skill. So if you had a thief that was based on poisons and had a high alchemy skill, you could actually learn magic a lot faster with that character through the alembic than the regular guy is going to learn through the research journal. Although I will say the research journal is more focused, right? Because with the research journal, you can pick exactly which spell you want to research, which allows you to grow in a specific direction. Whereas if you're using just the alembic and the stuff that you find over time, you're going to get a much wider range of magical knowledge, which is great for experimentation if you're just playing around to see what kind of combinations create what kind of spells. But obviously in early game, I would recommend starting with the research journal just so you can at least focus on the school of magic that you want to base your character off of. That's just my take. But there is a third option here that isn't really listed because it doesn't actually require an item in order to use, and that requires enchanting. I have accidentally given my character max enchanting, so you're going to see a much bigger result from this than you would normally get. I'm trying the mod experience that actually limits the level of your skills based on the amount of quests and places you've explored, but I didn't know you could bypass that with the command line, and I did, and I can. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to postpone research because we're not doing this the nerd way today. So let's say we've already looked at learning magic the nerd way and the alchemist way. Now we have the Indiana Jones way. So the Indiana Jones way, as I call it, is you loot various places and you find imbued items as well as theses. Now we saw theses before as the ingredients for making spells. But they have another function that I completely missed, and this is why I'm so glad I do a YouTube channel where I dive into these different mods, because I would have completely missed this during my entire playthrough, and it is just awesome. So, you know what, we'll start with one of these. So originally, I thought that if you got a thesis that you didn't know, so for example, let's say I didn't know anything about the Daedra archetype, and I find the thesis for it, I thought I had to wait until I, through my experimentation and book study, found enough knowledge in Daedra to actually do something with it. Actually, if you just click on this sucker, you can treat it like a magical item. Now, if I actually, you know what? No, this will be fine. So I can analyze the item. It says the item doesn't have any secondary effects. So most of the imbued items will have magic in their core function and then a secondary effect that actually does something. Now, when I first tried this, I thought it meant that this piece of paper had no function. I was incorrect. The trick is you got to go for the base property, right? It doesn't have any secondary properties because it's just paper with a glyph on it. But you can focus on the base property, and your enchanting skill will be used to extract as much information out of the page as possible. And as you can see, I have learned an extraordinary amount on apprentice level spells involving Daedra. And if your alchemy skill is high enough, you can do this multiple times without destroying the item. And that's the thing. The more you dig into an item, the greater the likelihood it's going to be destroyed. If your enchanting skill is high enough, you can also overload an item with magic, but I don't think that will work on a thesis. We can try it, but a thesis in and of itself doesn't contain magic. It tells you about magic, but let's try it and see what happens. Okay. Oh. It worked. Okay, so that is an option that it's kind of like the lottery, right? You're going to basically set the thing on a magical fire and learn as much as you can about it before it is consumed. And if you have a low enchanting skill, or you just have a lot of items, because you will loot a ton of these if you go through a few dungeons, you will have a stockpile. And you might not have the time or the interest to go through and break down each one based on its base and secondary components, in which case you can just overload them with magic. This also does count as training up your enchanting skill. Like, your enchanting skill will rise as you do this, and you'll be able to extract more information as you gain your enchanting skill. So it works out well for an enchanter type character. All right, so we're going to analyze this item. There appears to be one identifiable secondary archetype imbued into this item. So what that means is that when I go over to, here's the description of the item. It feels strangely wet in your hands. Even after wiping it off and holding it close to a fire, it retains this damp surface. So the first thing we're going to shoot for is the base properties. Go study, base property. Every single one of these items will have a base property. And the base property of this is apprentice level spells involving creatures. And then we can also go after the secondary property. This is what was described in the initial description about the item always feeling wet. Extraordinary amount on adept spells involving water. So I don't know what this thing's original purpose was, to combine creature magic with water magic, but alright. And you know what, just for fun, let's go ahead and overload this item with magic and see what happens. Because I do have a maximum enchanting skill, so I don't know if this will blow up or what. So we can overload the item with magic and observe how its effects and properties react. Let's see what we got. 3. Okay. That's that. Okay, so what I really love about this is it now means that whenever you find these theses, you can actually learn all of these archetypes. And keep in mind, there's 300 of them, so there's plenty to go around. And if you have the mod to make spell tomes more expensive, they actually make decent loot, especially once you get up to like expert level stuff. And keep in mind, once you're at a high enough level, you can actually use your research journal and you can write scrolls and tomes that you can sell later, as well as creating your own theses. So you can really make creating spells, for example, the profession of your character, like what you use to make money. And it can be tied to raising magical skill. And personally, I usually go with enchantment anyway, so I'm all over this. Using your enchanting skill to learn as much as you can about every archetype, just fantastic. And I love that you can actually learn about the archetype from the theses instead of having to try and stumble through in the research book to try and unlock experience and do spells that you don't actually have experience in. I think it's fantastic that you can just study these straight away and add all of that experience to your character, because that makes things so much easier. I try to play through without that method where you just literally tried to learn everything through making theses based on just the spells you already know, which when you first start is like 5, if that. And then composing now, it takes forever, which is great if you wanted a super immersive playthrough, but I'm not that patient. But being able to learn your archetypes from theses and magical items, I think that is amazing. Okay, we can do this too. So you can also, as an extension of the enchanting skill, you can also study ancient texts that do the same thing. They serve the same function as imbued items in that they hold magical knowledge, magical formulas. But because they're super fragile, it depends on your enchanting skill to see whether or not you can actually translate the item. See, in this case, I was unable to translate the text. Yeah, there's a whole process there too, and frankly this video has already gone a lot longer than I intended. But I do want to show you the old grimoires, because these are the fastest way to learn the most information as possible about different archetypes. The thing is, they also have the greatest likelihood to blow up in your face, and they can actually remove spell knowledge. So they are a bit of a gamble. You don't want to try this if you have low enchanting, because they can literally make you forget your spells. But let's see what happens. Alright, so we can attempt to find some knowledge hidden within this grimoire, and may be able to find hints to help me complete a thesis or spell composition, though the path to this knowledge is often dangerous. The more intensely I study this grimoire, the more likely I'll encounter a trap or a curse hidden in the text. If I have the mental energy to focus some skill regarding enchanting and a bit of luck, I may be able to invade these traps. Oh, okay, we're hitting nothing first. Now remember, I was just doing stuff, enchanting, so I have mental exhaustion. I have 90 points of mental exhaustion. So we're going to rest first before we consult a grimoire that can actually erase spells from my frickin' mind. Just in case. I gotta remember to pray to my deity. Gods like their attention. There we go. Alrighty, let's see. What do we got here? Okay, old grimoire. Now we are going to study this puppy intensely because I have 100 enchanting and I am going to try and show you guys what you can do with this thing. Hope this doesn't blow up my face, although that would be quite the crescendo for this. Alright, while reading the grimoire, a few words rapidly begin to change, creating a pattern which also appears on my hand. Both patterns glow a blinding white. By the time the glow fades, the book has disintegrated into ash and I am feeling mentally drained. It appears I triggered a spell that used my own magic to destroy the book. That's just really unnecessary. Interesting. Okay, so the odds of a bad thing happening are random. Having a super high enchanting skill doesn't seem to help with that. So keep that in mind. The Grimoire is more of a random gallery. You might want to either stock them up for when you're feeling lucky or sell them because they're worth a super ton of money. It's actually one of the few enchanting items that one of the spell learning items you can buy from vendors, because with the mods that I run, they don't have spell books. All right, so that is it for spell research. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion into the mod. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like a deep dive into the entire mod, or if there's a particular kind of research that you want to see in more detail, like the nerd way, the alchemy way, the enchanting way. You can request the alchemy way too. I would just start a separate playthrough with just this mod and make sure that that particular bug doesn't continue following me around. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and take care.